Music driven noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine pun Kelly, get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangle lies. Steam fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello and good afternoon or good morning. Technically, it's still morning on the West Coast, I think. But anyway, I just wanted to hop on. Wasn't planning on doing a podcast today, but after, so I got up this morning, wasn't feeling all that great last night, so I slept in a bit. Turned on the TV, and Donald Trump was in the middle of his UN speech, and it was the weirdest, most incoherent, I'm sorry, trying to say the word incoherent, babbling bucket of nonsense in the history of mankind. Never in my life have I ever heard anyone given a platform say so many stupid, idiotic, ignorant, just blathering, nonsensical things in one speech than I did today. It was the most embarrassing moment in the history of the United States. It was terrible. He just crapped over the entire world and then blamed the entire world for his crap. It was insanely ridiculous. So I'm going to go through some specifics here about why it was stupid. Just to keep my thoughts organized, I went ahead and I'm going to share this with you. I just had Grok. I asked Grok for some help and asked Grok to summarize for me the speech. This, should be relatively neutral. It shouldn't be like just, like one-sided stuff. This is not MSNBC's recap or Fox's recap. This should be a down-the-middle recap. So brief recap of Trump's, actually, maybe recap is a better idea. I accidentally said that, but I think this is a recap of Trump's UN General Assembly speech. In his nearly hour-long address to the 80th UN General Assembly in New York, delivered after a teleprompter malfunction, President Donald Trump delivered a combative critique of the UN and global leaders, touting U.S. achievements while warning of international threats. Ostensibly, you could shoehorn that in and say it's accurate, but this is way too polite. So Trump called the organization ineffective and wasteful, comparing it to a broken escalator that failed during his arrival. First of all, these things are not equivalent. I mean, it's just dumb. Escalators break, things break. But secondly, he actually cut funding to the UN building that would have fixed things like that. Like the very fact that the escalator is broken you can draw a straight line to Trump. He's the one that cut the funding to keep up maintenance on the building. And he also blamed them for the teleprompter malfunction. But again, he's the one that cut the funding to maintain the building, which, if you haven't noticed, New York is still part of America, which is where the UN building is. Then he goes like, this is unhinged. He accused it of funding migrant caravans to the U.S. border. And it's $372 million budgeted in 2024 for cash, food, and transport, and failing to prevent conflicts. The UN is not funding migrant caravans to the United States. There is no giant conspiracy for the UN to get migrant caravans to the United States to do whatever kind of replacement theory crap he's talking about. No, the UN is not funding migrant caravans. I don't even know from whence that came. I imagine there's some sort of. Hang on, I'm going to ask Rock what the hell he's talking about. Uh, so we're just going to see if Grok even has any idea what he's talking about. So in his September blah. He specifically referenced the UN's alleged provision of food, shelter, debit cards, cash, and transportation to facilitate these movements, framing it as part of a global migration agenda that undermines national sovereignty. Trump claimed the UN budgeted $372 million in 2024 for such aid, including humanitarian transportation for migrants crossing borders toward the US. He tied the $372 million figure refers to the UN's. Oh, okay. The $372 million figure refers to the UN's 2024 Regional Refugee and Migrant Response Plan. So this is not funding migrant caravans. This is helping people who have been forced out of their own homes for various reasons. And not all of them are coming to the United States, and they are not being funded caravans. And they are just feeding people who lost their homes. This is not the same thing. This is actually kind of evil of him, as far as I'm concerned. Accusing people, like, why does he hate brown people so much? They don't deserve to eat. Like, this idea that you're not allowed to eat unless you're white or something. It's just so insane. Like, what does he mean? What does he think they're supposed to happen? They have to stay there and get killed? They have to die of starvation? Like, what does he think should happen? He is like accusing people of some sort of conspiracy against America because they're feeding brown people. It is just insane. There's nothing at all accurate about this. And frankly, it's just cruel. So 372 million goes for cash assistance to 624,000 in-transit migrants, often via debit cards or envelopes. While the budget exists and provides to aid migrants, including those in caravans, UN officials and fact checkers describe it as a humanitarian support for the vulnerable fleeing violence, poverty, or climate issues, not funding assaults or organized invasions. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not some sort of like to get America, it's to help brown people that literally had their lives destroyed. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with feeding homeless people? What's wrong with helping them? It has nothing to do with the United States. It's just evil for him to say this. Critics like the Center for Migration Studies can argue that aid indirectly enables U.S. bound flows by sustaining migrants en route, but UN documents emphasize dignity, autonomy, and reducing risks like smuggling. So it's like just, you're helping them indirectly. So what? Don't help them indirectly? Just let them die? Because they're not people? Because they're not Americans? What is stuff like that even supposed to mean? It's so just deplorable and disgusting that he talks like this. This is not America. All right, so So then after that, this one was kind of ironic. He lambasted unchecked migration as destroying cultures, warning European leaders, your countries are going to hell due to open borders. He specifically criticized London's mayor, Sadiq Khan, and urged nations to reject mass influxes that trample sovereignty and strain resources. So he is telling other countries what to do and saying if they don't do what he says, they're trampling sovereignty. He's not king of the world. Isn't asking them to submit to somebody who is not their own leader, isn't that trampling sovereignty? He wants to tell other countries what to do and saying that if they don't do what he says to do, then somehow they are losing their sovereignty. They can only be sovereign if he lets them rule over them. It is the most, like, I don't, like, people aren't paying enough attention to this, but his trying to self-elevate himself from fake king of the country to fake king of the world is insane. The man is a nut. He is a despotic nut. He is a Looney Tunes idiot. He's both dumb and evil. Everybody wants to make it a choice between the two, but the two are not mutually exclusive. He is an evil idiot. And we need to stop pretending he's anything but. We need to stop giving what he says some kind of logical weight or trying to balance it out or something like that, or what he really meant. He really meant what he really said. He said that feeding migrants is evil or something, not evil, is wrong, is an attack on America. What a disgusting, pus-filled man. Okay, so now here, this one I want to focus a bit on more. Climate change and energy. He dismissed it as a con job. Trump mocked UN climate efforts, pushed UN energy exports, criticizing Europe for buying Russian oil and fueling conflicts like Ukraine. All right, so let's just, I'm going to put this down for a minute, and we're just going to talk about climate change. And if you have been on my channel for a while or looked around at it much, the climate change is very, very real. Climate change is not it's not a hoax. And the idea that global warming, so, okay, first of all, he said, like, we talked about global cooling and that didn't happen. And I hear a lot of like right-wing climate change deniers talk about this, that oh, what about global cooling? Remember global cooling? Yes, I remember global cooling. That was 50 years ago. And what was happening is you had these spray cans, these spray aerosol cans that had something in them that was putting a hole in the top of the atmosphere. And so heat was escaping out of that. And at least in, geologically speaking, a lot of people don't realize it. I did not know this until just recently when I did my research on climate change. But you think that the Earth is just going around in a perfectly round orbit around the sun, and you think it's just always this same round orbit. But what it is it actually has a cycle, and I think they're called the Malavechian cycles, or no, I can't remember. Some McKelvey, some M word cycles. But what it is that it goes around in like an oval, and then it gradually becomes more round, and then it gradually goes back to being an oval. And so this cycle, where it goes like this, and then this, and then this, and so it's the same distance, but it's like the orbit contracts and then uncontracts to where it's more oval versus circular. And the more oval it is, the closer the closest passing to the sun will be, and the further away it'll be in the winter. But that closeness and is part of it. And then there's something called a wobble, where it's the Earth is like a top. Like if you ever spin a top and then it starts to wobble, the Earth's rotation, not its revolving, but its rotation is more like a top. So the amount of and when it wobbles, if it's like, here's the axis. If it wobbles this way, it'll be a little closer. If it wobbles this way, it'll be, or if it wobbles this way, it'll be a little further away. If it wobbles this way, it'll be closer. So both with the, like the wobble and with the orbit, both with our rotation and with our orbit, the closeness to the sun is not a constant. And the reason that we have fluctuations in climate over thousands of years is because of these cycles of both the rotation and the orbit. And we are not quite at the highest the Earth has ever been in human history, but we're getting really close. But the other part of this is right now, like when we were at our peak, the hottest it ever got, it's because both of those things were like maxed out at the time. We were as close to the sun as the Earth can get for a while. And because of that, there was just some natural warming that happened. And it took thousands and thousands of years for that much warming to happen. It takes about 10,000 years to go from like average temperatures to just slightly warmer than the temperatures we're having now. The difference is we're actually headed into an ice age geologically. We should be getting cooler right now, but not like human civilization ending cooler, just cooler. So when people are like, well, the climate change is natural, it does change naturally, but it doesn't change this much this fast, and not when the Earth is doing the thing it is doing in terms of rotating and in terms of its rotation and orbit. Now, what was happening in the 70s is that we were using these aerosol sprays that I was talking about, and it was like basically poking a hole in the ozone layer. So heat was escaping out. And so scientists were very worried, this is going to exacerbate the fact that we're headed into this ice age. So we need to do something about it. So what happened is the governments around the world all banned using this aerosol spray, and then the ozone layer healed. And so now that's not an issue anymore. So when they say global cooling never happened, what they don't say is global cooling never happened because we listened to the science and acted accordingly. It did not just not happen magically. It's like saying brakes don't prevent car accidents. Yes, they do. I know this because I have like stopped my car and not gotten in an accident. But if like my wife is yelling, hit the brakes, and then I hit the brakes, and then I'm saying, why did you yell at me to hit the brakes? And she's like, because we were going to get in an accident. I said, oh, we didn't get in an accident. What are you yelling at me about? That's what Donald Trump is doing. He is yelling and saying that there was never any danger because we actually prevented the catastrophe that the danger was by removing the danger. Okay, so setting that aside, actual climate change is what is happening. Is that there are, these what they call greenhouse gases, and they're called greenhouse gases for a reason. They are gases that actually keep the heat on the Earth. It keeps the heat from leaving the way it has always left. And so not as much heat leaves. And I think what happens is that people think that the, like global warming or whatever, is that it's a constant. Like everywhere it is the same. Like, but that's not what's happening. And this is what I found really interesting when I was looking into it, because I had no idea. Maybe you do. If you do, you're smarter than me. So, or at least you're more informed than me on that. But what happens is, for various reasons, mostly that, the tilt of the Earth is towards the sun, and because we have more land mass, and land mass holds temperatures more, we have more the temperature of the Earth is not all raising at the same rate. It's raising, it's going up much faster at the North Pole than it is on the equator. And so the temperature difference between the North Pole, which is colder than the equator, and the equator, so if this is heating up faster than this, and this is warmer than this, then that means the gap, the gap in the relationship between the two is getting smaller. So there is less temperature difference in the equator now and the North Pole than there was, say, 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And that's where it's really, really damaging, and why it's, I won't get into the history of why we call it climate change, but actually, I like the expression climate change, because climate is changing. So when you think about climate, think about the things that cause climate. Wind is one of them, right? Like, big part of climate is wind. And another big part of climate is ocean currents. Those are the two main things that affect climate. So there's this current Atlantic something or other that runs from South America and the Gulf of Mexico, I said it, all the way up to Europe. And what that does is it takes the warm water from the equator and it warms up Europe. All right. And that's why, I don't know if you ever, like, if you ever really look at a globe, it's fun to study a globe and look at just latitudes. And then, like, grab a city like Paris and then compare it to Paris. So, like, you think about the temperature in Paris and the weather in Paris and the climate in Paris, you think of it as being like maybe, roughly equal to something in the mid-Atlantic seaboard, right? Like something like maybe DC, you think of them as being comparable. They have winters, but you don't think of like, oh, Paris winters is really, really cold, right? If you think about America and the really, really cold, probably think of Minnesota. And if you go and you look at a map of Minnesota, it's actually, Paris is like northern Minnesota. Not even, like even north, like Duluth area. Paris's latitude is much further north than we think of it. But the reason it's different is, in temperature, is Minnesota is kind of landlocked, but also because of this current that warms all of Europe. And that's why Europe, if you like really look at a map and really look and think of it, Europe is way north of what we think of it as. But it's warmer because of this current. And what happens is, when the reason this current happens is because of something called entropy, or the law of the second law of thermodynamics, and which means things are going to go to the lowest energy, right? So heat has more energy than cold. So whatever's hot will move towards cold. And if you've ever ever lived somewhere and where it was like really, really cold out and you put your hand against the window or your finger against the window and it feels like there's a draft, that draft is not air coming from the outside to the inside. That's actually the heat from your hand leaving your body and going towards the cold window. That's an exact example of what I'm talking about. Heat moves towards cold. That's how physics works, right? So the next thing you need to understand is so the reason this current happens is because of that. Literally, it's the temperature difference, right? So what happens next is as you decrease that temperature difference, as I was talking about before, it slows the current. And as you slow the current, it affects climates. So right now, Europe is actually getting warmer, but eventually it could get colder. But it's not just about the temperature. It's about things like rainfall and when it falls and where it falls. And, and when the same thing happens with the wind and wind patterns and weather patterns. And it's not just about the temperature. It's about where rain falls, when rain falls. Monsoon seasons in India are impacted. Like it's globally changing the actual climate. Like the climate is changing. This is not something that will happen. This is something that is at present actually happening. So when they say, oh, these are all scare tactics and they're just trying to scare you off with something that's going to happen. No, we're trying to make you wake up and realize this is the thing that is happening. It is a happening thing. And so saying that it's a hoax is just pure unscientific drivel and denialism. It is absolutely happening. There is just no credible person on the planet who thinks it's not happening. There are people that think the earth is flat. That does not mean we should let them give speeches at the UN about how the earth is flat. This is not an opinion. Climate change is not an opinion. It is a fact. It is a fact that climates are changing. And it's a fact that the planet is warming. And it is a fact that man has caused this through the increase of fossil fuels and the abundant use of fossil fuels. These are not opinions. People that say it's opinions don't know the facts and aren't willing to learn them. And what they do is they learn, like these bogus talking points. And we'll get into the whole bogus talking points on the next topic because it's another thing. But I am tired of junk science being treated with the same respect as actual science. Only junk scientists don't agree with climate change. And I'm sorry, stop telling me about how, these poor little oil companies are being victimized by big education and they're the one, and they have their report that proves it's not true. They do not have reports that prove it's not true. And let's stop saying that, trying to make it out like the oil industry doesn't have a dog in the fight. I am much more skeptical of what big oil does than some professor at, Durham University or whatever that did a study on climate change. You want to know where the funding is? It's in oil. But he went there. Literally, the topic was climate change, and he went there, and all he did was deny it happens. It was just a humiliation to the United States. And if you aren't humiliated, then you're too stupid to know you should have been. So then he pushed U.S. energy exports, criticizing Europe for buying Russian oil and fueling conflicts with Ukraine. Yes. Well, he went to the UN and said that it's Europe's fault It's Europe's fault. The Ukraine war is Europe's fault. He keeps making it sound like this is a war between two people or two countries that have an equal, part in it. To be deliberately over the top obscene about it, that's like saying Charlie Kirk deserves equal responsibility with Tyler Montgomery for Charlie Kirk getting shot. It's literally blaming the victim. Russia did not go to war with Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine. The war is 100% Russia's fault. And Europe is 100% right to help Ukraine defend itself from a foreign invader. And remember, this is a person that has threatened to invade Canada, threatened to invade Greenland, threatened to invade Mexico, threatened to invade Panama. Now he's threatening to invade Argentina. He's like killing people on the open seas, murdering them, has no legal right to do what he's doing. But yeah. Anyway, back to Europe. Europe helping Ukraine defend itself from Russia is not wrong. Us pulling out of helping Ukraine defend itself from Russia is wrong. The only ones wrong here are Russia. Russia is 100% at fault. They need to pull 100% of their troops out of all of Ukraine, all of it, and they need to pay restitution. So, okay, he talked more about that. He demanded an immediate end to the Gaza war. Well, gee, that should be helpful. Yeah, end the Gaza war. Why didn't anybody think of this? Nobody in the UN thought, hey, maybe they should end the Gaza war. He's opposed to recognizing a Palestinian state as a reward for Hamas. Okay, first of all, let's stop comparing all of Palestine with Hamas, okay? Most 95% of Gaza is not Hamas. The last time there was a free and fair election in Gaza was like I don't remember the exact year, but around 2005. Might have been 2006. And Hamas didn't even win a majority of the votes. They won a plurality of the votes. And there wasn't any election since then. Over half the population of Gaza wasn't even born the last time that there were elections. And yes, that means more than half of Gaza is under the age of 20. You're bombing a nation full of children. Children that weren't even alive when Hamas was elected. And over half the people that are still alive that voted during that election didn't even vote for Hamas. And not everybody that voted for Hamas voted for what is happening. So it's incredibly disingenuous to say that it's rewarding Hamas. It's not rewarding Hamas. It's fixing a situation that has been going on for 150 years. I think a lot of people are confused about why there is a conflict in Gaza right now. And maybe some on both sides. It is not a religious war. All right. A lot of people think it's a religious war. And they'll say, this has been going on for 2,000 years. It hasn't been going on for 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, Titus leading the Roman army, kicked all the Jews out of Israel after Israel tried to do a rebellion thing and lost. And since then, Jews have been scattered throughout Europe and for a long time through the Middle East up until the last century. For most of that time, a lot of them were living in areas like Iran, and the ones that weren't in Europe were like in Iran or Turkey or Egypt. They were, and the Ottoman Empire actually did not persecute Jews, even though it was a Muslim empire. And they had something called people that were of the book. And there were three kinds of people of the book. And there were Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And Christians and Jews did not have the same rights as Muslims. I'm not going to say they are, but they were allowed to kind of self-regulate. They had their own like little kind of internal government that still answered to the Ottoman government. But for the most part, it's like a local, like a state government or something, where they were allowed to more or less self-govern. And they were allowed religious freedom. They could pray. They could do whatever they wanted. There was no religious conflict. Then in the Ottoman Empire started to wane around the, like in the 19th century, it started to wane. So in the 1850s, they passed a series of land laws. And the reason they were passing these land laws is so they could get more taxes. And they needed more taxes because they were waning. One of these laws allowed, like without getting into a bunch of details, but allowed a bunch of oligarchs to basically declare land as theirs that wasn't theirs. And then another one of these laws allowed for them to sell this land to people overseas. And so they were selling land to Jewish people who were, in the same course of time over 2,000 years in Europe, were being persecuted. And there's no stop acting, like some people act like Jews weren't persecuted until Hitler came along. There's a reason Hitler made the Jews their scapegoat. They were the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. And so what happened is like they would like just for thousands of years, every time something went wrong, they blamed the Jews. If a plague came along, it's because the Jews poisoned the well, literally. If there was some kind of financial thing, what happened is that there was, like the Catholic Church wouldn't allow you to lend money. It was like against the law to lend money if you were a Christian, right? And so only Jews were allowed to lend people money. And they were the money lenders. Like literally, this is where the whole Jews own the world stereotype comes from. This is the trope. I don't think people know where this trope comes from, because it's actually really fascinating, right? Like the reason that Jews were the money lenders is because that's literally the only job that they were allowed to have. And they were the only ones allowed to do it. And so that's what they did, is they were the bankers. They were the money lenders. And then if things went bad, it was their fault. They were the ones that were running everything, and they were the ones secretly in charge because they had all the money. And so what would happen is, whatever king or queen was running the show that day would, like kick out all the Jews out of the country and take away their debt. And they'd seize the debt owed to that, Jewish person. They didn't get to leave with all their money. They got to leave with their lives, and that was it. And this was happening for thousands of years. So the Jews, they all went to Israel. They started buying the land and going to Israel. And I think it was, and there was a series of things that happened. And then in World War I, there was like the British Empire was like making different promises to different people, and they had made one promise to the Muslim or to the Palestinians. Hey, if you join us, then you can have a state afterwards. You can have your own state. And then they told the Jews that they could have their own state. And then they also were carving up the whole area between them and France and some other countries. And guess what happened? Guess Israel didn't get a state. Palestine didn't get a state. And really the only solution that was, I think his name was Montgomery, a British general, was he was the first one to propose a first state solution right before I think it was right after World War I. Anyway, they went from, even before Israel was granted statehood, they went from like just a few thousand Jewish people to Jewish people making up like 25 or 30% of the area, the population. And the Palestinians were not happy about this, because imagine, like what happens to them. Like, people don't really look at it from their side. And you've had this farm in your land for 6 generations or 10 generations, and then one day some dude comes up and says, "Hey, I own this land now." And you're like, "I never sold you my land." And it's like, "No, the owner did." And you're like, "I'm the owner." You don't even know what's going on. And all of a sudden, some guy shows up at your house telling you he owns your house now. And he legally owns your house, even though you never legally sold your house. Wouldn't you be a little bit pissed off if that happened? I think I would be. But, the Palestinian side is that their lands and their rights were sold to other people without them having any say in it. From the Jews' side, they didn't insist on that area. What the Jews were like, give us anywhere. They're like, give us Central Africa. We don't care where it is. Just give us any place on the earth and we will go live there. That will make that our homeland. They did not insist on Jerusalem or anything like that, which is another thing I think people don't understand. Is and so it's like, I think there's a lot of, they're both, they're both at fault. Like in some ways you can say they are both at fault, and that they are both have done things that are wrong, like both sides. But both sides have been wronged too. Like, Jewish people have a long history of being persecuted and wronged. The Palestinians who never sold their homes were persecuted and wronged. Neither side is 100% wrong, and neither side is 100% right. And that's what nobody understands about this conflict, is both sides have a reason to believe they are in the right. And most, there's not a lot of honest conversation about this. It's like, I hear all the time, "Oh, it's about Isaac and Ishmael," or something like that. It's not. There was not enmity for most of that time. We went 2,000 years without there being an issue between those two. It's only after people from outside started buying land from people that didn't own it. If you really want to blame anybody, blame the Ottoman Empire. But we're kind of, a little late on that because it doesn't exist anymore. All right. So when you're talking about Gaza, and when you're talking about Israel coming in and just wiping out the entire West Bank and displacing everybody, that's just genocide. And that's what the President of the United States wants to do. Like, yes, dislocating millions of people from their home is genocide. That's like literal definition of genocide. It's not genocide on the same scale as Hitler wiping out 6 million people, but it's still genocide. And it's still wrong. And the people who are being killed, I think it's up to at least 60,000. Gaza only has like 5,000, or Hamas only has like 5,000 people. So it's like impossible for it to be 60,000. All of them are Hamas. No, they're not. Most of the infants, I'm pretty sure, never really had a formed an opinion on Hamas. And also, I'm not sure you're doing more to prevent or cause more people to want to be in Hamas. Right now, the only people defending them are Hamas, but Hamas is also killing them. So there's that. Hamas are terrible. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to try and make it out like there's some sort of, like great people or virtuous people or something. Terrorism is bad. But stop using Gaza and Hamas interchangeably. That's like me using Proud Boys in America interchangeably. But, MAGA gets that confused too. So what is the solution? I think it's got to be something grounded in two-state solution. He says that you're rewarding Hamas if you, give Gaza, statehood. But he has no problems saying that you're rewarding Russia if you give them the areas of Ukraine they fought hard for on the battlefield. And this is the president of the United States. Just stream of conscious ignorance floating out there in front of the entire world at the UN Assembly. He called NATO allies to shoot down Russian aircraft violating airspace, citing incursions into Poland, Romania, and Estonia. I'm just not sure how I feel about that either way. But I can't help but wonder, what if Biden had said something like that? And all of their railing on about starting World War III and how Biden was going to start World War III. This seems pretty World War III-ish. Telling NATO to shoot down Russian aircraft, that's an act of war. And if NATO is at war with Russia, we're in another world war. He is literally advocating for the start of World War III. And nobody calls him out on that. Why isn't he? Why is there no talk about, gee, why is he sitting there, trying to provoke World War III? I have a hunch that if this were Biden, Fox News would be just literally just crapping in buckets and throwing the crap around the studio right now. Okay. He also highlighted U.S. military actions against Venezuelan drug networks and boasted of, so he bragged about, murdering the alleged drug dealers on the open seas. We have seen no evidence that they are drug dealers, nor does he have any legal qualification to just, without even consulting with Congress, go and start blowing up people that he claims are drug dealers. And he's going to provoke a war with Argentina if he keeps doing that. Argentina denies that they were drug dealers. Now, Argentina could be lying. He could be lying. Argentina could be mistaken. He could be mistaken. But, you don't just get to murder people and ask questions later. If they really were drug dealers, why not just send a Coast Guard to arrest them? Just track them until they get into U.S. waters. Send the National or the Coast Guard there. arrest the people, seize the drugs. You have proof then, right? And then you can actually give those people trials and prosecute them. You might even be able to flip them, and you might even be able to go after other people that committed crimes. That's the way that justice usually works. You don't get to just say this person is a drug dealer and murder them. Otherwise, you can murder anyone. If just making a claim makes it true, you can murder anyone. Calling them a terrorist organization does not make them a terrorist organization. If I call a banana a pear, it doesn't become a pear just because I changed the name of it. It's still a banana. It's a different thing. Cartels are bad. Cartels are evil. Terrorism is bad and terrorism is evil. But cartels are not terrorists. They mean different things. Drug cartels want to make money. That's all they care about. Terrorists want political change. That's all they care about. Drug cartel members do not want political change. They're not political organizations. Ergo, they are not terrorist organizations. They are bad. They are evil. Drugs kill people. Yes. And one of the things they like to do is they make this false dichotomy to where you're either against drugs or for drugs. And if you're not against drugs, then you are for drugs. And if you are not against murdering people on the open high seas under bogus charges of them being drug dealers, then you are for drugs. No, I'm sorry. I do not think that fentanyl is good and should be floating around in America. I do think that overdose deaths were already well on their way down long before Donald Trump was even elected president. I don't know that fentanyl was on those boats. And, based on a number of things, it's kind of illogical to believe they were. Like most of these drug trafficking boats, as far as I can, understand, were minimally manned, like you maybe 3-4 people on them. And the reason for that is because every person that, you put a 150-pound person on that boat, that's $150, 150 pounds of cocaine less that you can put on it. And the whole idea is to get the cocaine or fentanyl or whatever it is from there to here. What if there were people on there that were being human trafficked? You murdered them too. What if that's why they had 12 people on there? You just murdered people for being victims of crimes. So he did that. He did this illegal action, which outraged the world. Then he went and he bragged to the world about the outrageous thing he did. It's a humiliation to America. Trump emphasized America's unrivaled power. Yay! All the rest of the world is supposed to stand up and say, America first. He rejected multinationalism in favor of bilateral deals. And this, this is just part of his ineptness, his stupidity, his ignorance, and his unwillingness to learn or listen to anybody that corrects him on anything. The world has changed. Bilateral deals are pointless at this point because not everything happens between two countries. When you're talking about trade and things like that, you could have one product that's made in America that imports products from 8 different countries. What's wrong with multinationalism anyway? Like, why? I do not understand, when they're all like, oh, globalism is bad. Why? Please tell me why globalism is bad. I mean, other than the fact that the Jews are running everything. The way that they make, globalism is an anti-Semitic slur, the way they use it, by the way. going back to the trope I was talking about earlier in the broadcast about, Jews run the world because they were forced to be the moneylenders and all that. Okay. So why is globalism bad? I never understood what they have against globalism. I personally like the idea of world peace and a prosperous worldwide economy. He just wants people north of the equator in the Western Hemisphere to be, to do well. And he wants the rest of the world to be subservient. What? Oh, I wonder if that has anything to do with white people. Might be. So he emphasized America's unrivaled powers, rejected multinational. I mean, imagine sitting there going, talking about rejecting multinational power and then hinting at deserving a Nobel Peace Prize for his peacemaking. If you're being completely fair, you can maybe give him a little bit of credit for Cambodia and Thailand and, saying that there wouldn't be any trade talks with those two countries if they went to war. And so there was like this brief skirmish where like 25 people died. And then they, de-escalated after he made his threat. I'm not sure that's worth the Nobel Peace Prize. And then there's another, where it was it this, not Sudan. It was, oh no, okay. It's Tiffany Trump's father-in-law. Just want to make sure I'm getting this right. So Masad Boulos, who is Tiffany Trump's husband's dad. And he was appointed as Somalia. That's the one. So there was this peace in Somalia that had been going on for a while. And I think it's Somalia. No, it's not. What is it? I just want to make sure. The Congo and Rwanda. Sorry. There was a civil war there that had been going on for a while. It was really bad. Like millions of people were displaced. There were other things in the works that had been going on. Like this has been years. There were some things in the works that, Biden was involved with, but they had kind of stagnated. And there were other people that were involved with this too, like the sorry, this is why I should research and not just do everything off the top of my head. But anyway, I'm just sitting there. I'm off the rails here. The Boulos did help negotiate a peace treaty between some different factions. I think it was Rwanda. I'm not positive about the country, but and I just, it's the long COVID. My brain isn't grabbing the name, but it's like it was a very serious conflict for a number of years in Africa. But there was like the leader of Qatar was probably more instrumental, but in terms of pushing it home, Boulos deserves credit. Like, I'm not going to deny he deserves credit for that. He does. And so, and he was appointed by Trump. So if you want to say that he deserves the Peace Prize for that, then, that's kind of a stretch, because Trump didn't actually do the work. If you're going to give it to an American, give it to Boulos. If you're going to give it to anyone for that, give it to the Qatar guy who actually did more work. But it couldn't have been done without Boulos also. Like, there is something there that somebody from the Trump world did contribute to peace. And that's as close as you can get. But again, this is the man that threatened to invade Greenland. This is the man that threatened to invade Mexico. This is the man that threatened to invade Argentina. This is the man sitting there advocating for the start of World War III. He is saying he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize because of made up stuff. He claims to have stopped conflicts and brought peace where there was no conflicts, and he has claimed to to stop conflicts where conflicts have not stopped. At best, he marginally was very tangentially involved in one conflict, and one conflict that was never even a war. I think I can find people. Give Zelensky the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, he is a warmonger. He renamed the Department of Defense the War Department. He is a warmonger. He made the U.S. military give him a parade. He is a warmonger. He is not a peaceful man. He wants war. He's pushing for one. He's trying to start one. He is bombing these boats in Argentina to try to get Argentina to respond so that we can then go to war with Argentina. I will be shocked if we go through these 4 years without the U.S. sending military troops somewhere. He bombed Iran. He encouraged the genocide of the Gaza Strip. This is not a man you give the Nobel Peace Prize to. He is not bringing peace. He's bringing hate. He's bringing division. He's bringing discord. He's bringing antagonism. He's propping up authoritarian leaders. He he's putting a 25% of tariff on Brazil because Brazil had the audacity to prosecute somebody that tried to overthrow their government just because America tried to prosecute him for trying to overthrow his government. Donald Trump is not a peaceful man. He is a warmonger, and you don't give warmongers the Nobel Peace Prize. He just wants it because Obama got one. And he can't admit, not for a moment, not for a breath, that Barack Obama is a better man. He's a smarter man. He is a more accomplished man. And he was a far better president than Donald Trump could ever hope to be. And that agitates him. That agitates him to the core. That outside of his little, MAGA following, the entire world knows it. He cannot stand being inferior to a black man. And that's why he's doing this. That's why the Nobel Prize is so important to him. It taunts him that Barack Obama won and he can't. But you know what? Barack Obama deserved it and he doesn't. Barack Obama brought peace. Donald Trump brings hate. There is nothing better about America because of him. Not one thing. He has never done a thing to help America. He's not making America great again. He's making America hate again. And I'll say it again just to piss off the MAGAs. Barack Obama is a better man than Donald Trump could ever hope to be. Prove me wrong, to quote Charlie Kirk. Prove me wrong. You can't. All right. So I also wanted to talk, it's not included here, but I also wanted to talk about the whole vaccine thing. All right. And this is what I was talking about with the junk science, like earlier with the climate change, the junk science versus the junk science versus actual science is what RFK Jr. has done now is he has made junk science equal and even above real science. All right. And the MAGAs like to debunk, or not debunk, dismiss expertise. And they mock at things like peer review. And I just think about this a lot. There was one time Noam Chomsky, who is literally, objectively, one of the smartest people who ever lived. And there was a question he was asked about the 9/11 tower and whether, it could have happened. It was kind of specific. It was like one of these things where, it's with a lot of these conspiracy theories, the reason it can be hard to debate with somebody that's in the conspiracy theories is they've got like this whole set of nonsense memorized that they don't know enough to know why it's nonsense. And Noam Chomsky is he just answered the question. He's like, I don't know all the details of this, but this is why it's important to trust peer review, because not everybody can know everything about everything, right? So peer review is not like a peer, like there's one person that decides this is true or this isn't true. It's the collection of people that are informed, that are responding to arguments based on what they know and what they're, in their expertise. And a lot of times, if you're not an expert, you can't see the bullshit versus the reality, but the experts know right away what you're talking about, and I'll just give you an example of this. There, after the like when they, the at the peak of COVID vaccine denial, and there was this one website everybody was, all the anti-vaxxers were using, that had this incredibly, like perfect argument and showed statistically and had all the studies and just really nailed it out. And an actual statistician, he has a PhD in statistics. He went through, he wasn't an immunologist. He was talking about how they were using the data to make their case. And so he went through, and it was like a 50 tweet long thing. It was like incredibly in depth, and it was just a Twitter thread, but he went through, item by item of the claims they were making and the statistics they were using to prove this claim, and showing how they were misusing the statistics. Like they would take this study and this study, and they would take these two studies that had different testing criteria, like that trace different things, and then overlapping the number of, like the people that were taking them, and kind of making a composite study out of two studies. And he's like, they didn't allow for the same control factor, so you can't just cross sample these things. It doesn't work that way. And most of it was not like a screed against anti-vax. It was more of a screed against just the abuse of statistics. And, like they say, you can use statistics to lie, you can use statistics to tell the truth. But the question of whether or not it's a lie or the truth is whether or not you're honest in them. And if you're trying to honestly understand something, statistics are really helpful. If you're trying to mispresent something, cherry-picked statistics are a great way to spread a lie. And so what he did is he went through and he showed all of this. And it was actually more about the defense of statistics than it was about the defense of vaccines. And I think we need that. We need the experts to come out and say why these things are wrong. So I'll give you an example, and I'll post this on Twitter later. There was one of my favorite follows is what's his name? My brain, my memory, my recall is not doing well today. Anyway, I'll post it on Twitter once I find it. But there's a doctor I follow on Twitter that had a great thread on explaining exactly how and why RFK Jr.'s basis for saying the Tylenol causes autism is just bogus. Like it's the science itself is debunked. And the reason for that is that, like they're saying, well, there's this 5% relationship between, autism and women that take Tylenol or whatever. And it's like, well, their siblings don't have autism. Why does it, like, why did these get, and then there are people that, when you and you can still say, well, like, just not everybody's going to get it. Well, once you make adjustments for siblings, then it's like there's no difference. It's just autistic children are going to end up having parents, because that's how people come into the world. And basically, the study just proves that autistic people have parents, if you're being honest. And the reason it's damaging is, one, that's the only painkiller pregnant women can take. And they're supposed, it's recommended they take the lowest dose possible, and they take it only when they absolutely need it. But if you've ever had a migraine headache, they suck. You're just asking pregnant women to live in pain. And I have never been pregnant, oddly enough. But I know people that have, and I know that it's not easy. I know that sometimes pregnant women have pain and, would like to be able to take something for that pain. Literally the only thing that they can take, according to doctors' recommendations, is Tylenol. And you're trying to take away that one pain medication they have based on a lie. The other thing is, it also reduces fever. And this is more dangerous because sometimes you need to bring down your fever. And not bringing down your fever could actually endanger the child. And it could endanger the mother. So Tylenol is the only thing that can do that for them. So you could end up actually causing miscarriages and actually causing deaths if the temperature gets up too high. And this is why you don't let people that aren't actually doctors make medical decisions for you. I have not seen a single reputable immunologist or a single reputable OBGYN doctor confirm that women shouldn't take Tylenol or that Tylenol causes autism. And there's a friend of mine on Twitter and Blue Sky. His name is Ben. He's a nice kid. I don't know if he's a kid. I think he's maybe in his 20s, but he's an autistic guy, and seems to be a pretty functioning autistic guy. And he said on Blue Sky today, I really liked what he said. He said, "Stop, trying to, I don't have autism because my mom took Tylenol, and I don't have autism because my mom took Tylenol, and I don't have autism because of vaccines. I have autism because that's the way my brain works." And I think that really hit me, because I think we've taken the word people out of people with autism and stopped recognizing that these are actual real people that are tired of being called a disease. They're not a disease. They're people that have a brain that functions slightly differently than ours. And I know there are some people that have autism, and it's a very small minority of even people with autism that leaves them unfunctioning. And I know this for a fact because my older brother, that's what he been doing for the last 30 years. He is a adult. He is a caretaker for adults with autism. And there's a house, and there's like a few people with autism that live together, and they're able to like have a job and more or less take care of themselves, but they still need someone there to help them navigate things. And that's what he does. So I'm not just talking out of my ass here. People with autism are people, and they're people before their disease. And RFK Jr. has reduced them to the disease when he does stuff like this. He is not trying to help people with autism, and he is not trying to prevent autism. He is using a disease to weaponize propaganda, anti-vax propaganda. Liz says, "Thank you for posting this information. Bless you." Thank you, Liz. Thanks for watching. So anyway, he wants to protect. He wants to. It's all of this is just to attack vaccines for whatever reason. And like back the whole anti-vax thing it's always been a thing. This is not a new thing. It's not like it just emerged. And like the first vaccines were for I want to say smallpox, and somebody figured out that you could if you took the vaccine, if you took a small amount of the virus from a cow that had it and you injected it into a person, then that would expose them to the disease enough that it would defeat it, and then you would develop your own natural immunity to smallpox. And George Washington mandated that everybody in the army, this was the first time that the army was mandated to get a vaccine, and it was an experimental vaccine at the time. And in fact, the idea of a vaccine was experimental at the time. And there were this kind of propaganda that started going around that because you were injecting this into your body, it was going to turn you into a cow. And there were editorial cartoons that you can Google this if you want. If you don't believe me, editorial cartoons that people were making about people turning into cows. So I just want you to think about that. The vaccine is going to change your DNA. Does that sound familiar at all? Does that particular breed of propaganda sound familiar at all? Where have we heard that before? It's the same thing as they're saying about the mRNA vaccines. It changes your DNA. It doesn't change your DNA. It doesn't even change your RNA. It's just, but what happens is then people, they go through and they have this whole thing about, proving how it changes your DNA or whatever. And, and it's just a big long elaboration of stupid. And it's, if you are not informed and you don't know anything and you don't cross check, it can make sense to you. You can be like, yeah, this is reasonable. I believe this. And then you're like, I don't want to turn into a cow. But you're not going to turn into a cow. And that's why peer review is so important, because no matter what you know, you don't know what you don't know, if you follow me. Like, you might know all the stuff about how cow DNA will turn you into a cow or whatever, but you don't know all the reasons it won't. And you don't even know that there are reasons that you won't. You think you have learned everything about vaccines. Like, anti-vaxxers aren't just ignorant. They have what I call informed ignorance. By informed ignorance, I mean they have a compendium of nonsense that they have spent hours and hours and hours researching the internet, they're like, these are the people that are like, you never find what you want to know, or you never find the truth on the first page of Google. If you haven't gone 3 or 4 pages deep, you're never going to find out the truth. And that's because it's not until they get that deep that they find something that confirms what they believe. They just dismiss everything that doesn't agree with them. And not everybody, has time to become experts on everything like MAGA does. And so some of us actually trust people that know what is going on. And we trust that in like in whole, the community, like whether it's the pharmacies or vaccines or whatever, that most of them are just made up of people honestly trying to figure out things, and that actually know a lot of things that we don't know. I know some MAGAs would be shocked to hear this, but people with PhDs have learned things. They actually learned things when they went to school and were taught things. They know things that you do not know, and we cannot know everything that everybody about everything. But we have engineers that can tell us why 9/11 was not a hoax. Or an inside job or whatever. We have people that are experts in immunology that can tell us how mRNA vaccines work and why they are not the danger that the anti-vax movement would like us to believe. And the CDC has a responsibility, and the Department of Human Services has a responsibility to listen to the experts and not the quacks. But what we have done is we have handed over the role of expertise to the quacks. And what that's now doing is it's creating havoc across the country in multiple ways. And one of the most important things is that insurance companies base their coverage on CDC recommendations. All right. So, like, let's talk about, like what Trump was saying today. He was saying that there's, your babies are getting a vaccine that's like 80 different vaccines all at once. And it's like this huge, thing that, like it's how, like he makes it sound like, like the babies are popping because there's so much fluid in this shot. You know how much liquid there is in your typical MMR, which is just it's 3 diseases, by the way: measles, mumps, and rubella. There's also one for measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox, if you want to get the fourth. Guess how big that guess how much substance is in that shot. It's 1/10 of a teaspoon. 1/10 of a teaspoon. 0.5 milligrams. That doesn't sound huge to me. I don't think babies are being popped because they got an injection that is 1/10 of a tablespoon large. But now, how many millions of Americans think that there's this shot that they're giving babies that's this huge shot and it's got 80 different vaccines in it? See, this is why you don't, and not only that, the CDC is using the same kind of reasoning. Just nonsense. Absolute nonsense. All right. Not everybody has time to sit at home and Google everything Donald Trump says and find out what the lies are. And that's not even relevant entirely. What's relevant is that insurance companies base what shots they cover on the CDC recommendations. So if the CDC doesn't recommend the MMR vaccine for babies, insurance companies may not cover the MMR vaccine for babies. So it's not about giving parents the right to not give their babies those shots. It's about parents that want to get their parents immunized, the ability to immunize their children. These shots can, sometimes they might be $75. Sometimes they might be $1,500. And every few years you might have to get different shots. And if you have 4 or 5 kids, how many parents have $2,000 a year extra to spend getting their kids immunized? And then some kids can't get immunized, right? So now you'll have people who don't want to get their kids immunized that won't get their kids immunized. You'll have people that want to get their kids immunized that just don't have the money to get their kids immunized. And you're going to have people that have the money and want to get their kids immunized that get their kids immunized. So this is class warfare. This is, again, the poor people are the ones that suffer from the policy that rich people aren't affected by. And I'd also like to point out, there are the people that can't get immunized because of allergies or things like that. And there's something called herd immunity, which, I think probably most of you remember this from 2020, but herd immunity means that like basically 95% of the population is immunized. The disease just can't latch on and spread. And when you start taking away herd immunity, kids that, like kids that can't get vaccinated are protected by herd immunity. Like it's not that they can't get the disease, it's just they can't get the disease if they're not exposed to it. And if enough of the population is immunized, then they won't get exposed to it. And so you can't get it if you're not exposed to it. All right. And so, this anti-vax movement got picked up, and now they're starting to make it sound like all the vaccines are bad, not just the COVID vax. Because the same dishonest approach to the COVID vax is equally dishonest about everything else. And the COVID vax is a whole other issue. But the COVID vax works. It just doesn't work perfectly. And this, that is a whole other thing. And they're like, oh, the big pharma. Like, big pharma is not a response. It's not an argument. It's not a rebuttal. And yes, big pharma has done things that are bad, like oxycodone and shoving that down everybody's throat. But that doesn't mean everybody that researches vaccines is bad. Some people in the industry do not make everybody in the industry. Nor, like, we need pharmaceuticals. Like, that's kind of a given, right? So and the other thing about the whole big pharma bad thing is that they're all for, like, big corporations when it comes to everything else. But for some reason, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, there is the one place where capitalism is bad. Like, what are they supposed to do? Work for free? Give stuff away? You're either for capitalism or you're not. But only being against capitalism if it helps save lives is kind of stupid to me. But now the junk science is not just given an equal platform with actual science. Junk science is being called actual science, and actual science is being called junk science. You have kooks running the Department of Health and Human Services. And kook number one literally starved a brainworm to death with his brain. Lived off roadkill. And swims in literal shit. So maybe he is not the person that you should be listening to when it comes to health matters. If I went over to your, like, say somebody invited you over for dinner. And you're like, oh, what's for dinner? And they open up the freezer and they're like, and then they're like, oh man, we're having roadkill possum tonight. Ever had roadkill possum? It's the best. Put on some cream mushroom soup and, just throw it in the oven. And then you just make a gravy out of it. And you just kind of serve the whole thing over rice. Man, if you've never had possum and rice, you've never eaten, boy. First of all, you're not going to eat dinner. Second of all, you're not going to ask that asshole for medical advice. But Donald Trump made him Department of Health, put him in charge of Health and Human Services. That's not the dumbest thing any president's ever done. I don't know what is. And now he went to the UN and bragged about how stupid he was in front of the entire world. He's an idiot. And he's an evil idiot. And you don't have to choose between the two. All right. That's it for today's podcast. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you around the interwebs.